Hey, welcome to Creatacast with your host, David Welch. Today's show is going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be very long. It's just going to be encouragement for those who are writing or in the writing community and you're going through a lull. You're like struggling. You can't come up with anything. You're sitting in front of the computer for hours or notepad or whatever your writing mechanism is, and nothing's coming. You've hit this creative wall. When that happens, go do something else. I mean, it sounds simple, but you generate stories as you go. You find tidbits of information that's unique and interesting to you, and then you add it to your story. Now you could do the whole Finding Forrester method where you start with a sentence that's not your own, and then just go from there and rip a story. You could do a multitude of things. You can change up your writing scheme. Like, I know if you're knee deep in fantasy, challenge yourself to something else. Say, you know what? I've been writing fantasy. I've come to this creative wall. I'm not like really in it right now. Let me challenge myself and write maybe a romantic story, maybe a sci-fi story, maybe a romantic sci-fi story. Something that's not native to you. Or if not native to you is academic writing, try your hand at journalism. Try your hand at something that is changing up your writing. If you're a fiction writer, write poetry. If you're a poetry writer, write fiction. Or if you write in both types and both styles, write academic. Now, if you write all three like I do, then try your hand at journalism. There are multiple mechanisms in the writing arena that you can give a try. Now, if you're somebody who dabbles in everything like I do, because I write scripts, I write plays, I'm working on screenplays. If you do a little bit of everything, you're a jack of all trades when it comes to writing because you're a good content writer, technical writer, and you're still hitting this creative block, even though you're like, I don't even want to look at a computer or a screen. If you're in that mode, it's okay to detract yourself or disengage and go out and do something that's working your creative genius, but it's different. For me, that's filming and videography. I've been able to apply that in a multitude of settings lately, and I've been able to catch great content. Not all of it that I can publish, but there's a lot of stuff that I can. And learn about different writing industries because you may be able to be good at something or may try your hand at something that is lucrative. Now, and here's what I mean by that. In the press community, they have what are called stringers, people who are kind of like freelance writers who gather content for a story, whether it's film or photos, and then they write an article to that after they do some public information requests or they find the information readily available, and then they generate a story, and then they kind of shop it around like, hey, I've got this story. It's approximately 500 to 750 words. I have these videos and these photos to go with it. If you come to an agreement with a company or a news station, say, you know what, hey, I'll give you the video, I'll give you the story for $100. You're still making a profit and you're still getting your work out there. And what they'll do is they'll put you down as a staff writer, or they may not even put down a specific writer. Or if it's like a very popular website, they might just put staff writer, or they may put your name down, that way you can get credit for it. It all depends on the agreement you come to with that. But going out there and finding actual stories and digging into the details and doing research on something is only going to help the creative process, only going to help you as a writer. And it's not going to necessarily steer you away from what you normally do in writing, but it does allow you to open up your creative doors. It does allow you to engage in an area of your brain that you're not normally used to operating in, which can be fun. Now, if you were very stuck in your ways, like I know I used to be as a writer, I was very hardcore, just poet, and then I used to write predominantly historical fiction and read historical fiction. And then I started, I had to open myself up in the reading manner first, where I started reading a little bit of everything, and college was a big help for that. But at the same time, like even before college, I was, dabbling into sci-fi, but it was a specific type of sci-fi. And then I had to really opened myself to more opportunities. So the more you read the different type of genres you read and find interest in, the more adept you are at crafting stories that are with a little bit of knowledge base or with a little bit of an eye for what publishers are looking for, especially if you start reading a lot of mainstream like steampunk. Like, so that's a very unique niche, but you may have a knack for it you don't know or an interest for it until you read it. Um, I have a kind of a steampunkish post-apocalyptic story that I'm working on that I'm in love with the process. I like what I'm doing. I like the how it's being crafted, and it's something I never would have thought in a million years that I'd dabble in writing, but I'm enjoying the process. So, um, but yeah, so my advice right here, if you're stuck in a creative wall block, then one, remove your disengage and then go try something different that's creative, and not necessarily look at a screen, not necessarily attempt to write something different, but do something wholly active and creative at the same time. And if sport is your creativity, if you go pump ironing and don't look at a screen and don't engage in that way, that's great. But sometimes a sport, like go shoot hoops, go like, and if you're, if that is not your cup, if you are not athletic at all and you're a writer and that's not your cup of tea, that may be something that would reinvigorate your writing, because it's something that's new. It's not necessarily comfortable. And then where we find ourselves in prominence is being uncomfortable. So that's something else. Or if you are very stuck in your mode of writing where like you only write fantasy, you only write sci-fi, you only dabble in something else, that is another piece of advice. Try your hand at something a little different. A little research goes a long way. I mean, sometimes just cursory information allows people to fill in the gaps detail wise, or that allows them to understand that, hey, you have a cursory knowledge and so do they, but it's just engaging the way you compose it, right? Another piece of advice, not just try your hand at a different genre, a different style of writing, but a different mode entirely. Like if you're a fantasy person, or if you, not just genre, but if you're a fiction writer, try poetry. If you're a poetry writer, try your hand at fiction. If you write predominantly in the first person, write a third person piece or a second person piece. Those are hard. Do something that's different to activate your synapses, to fire off your different areas of the brain. One of the stories that I did to really challenge myself was write a math story. I abhor math. I hate. It's a good word to use, because I'm actually decent at math, but I don't like doing. It just hurts my brain, and it's extremely uncomfortable for me. But I was sitting in class one day, and I was like, and this is when I was an undergrad. I was like, well, I do have to challenge myself. I do have to really go hard at something I'm not used to writing, which is a genre math piece, and I did, and it's one of my favorite pieces to date, and it's one of the pieces that has had the most publication. So it's like, wow, I didn't know that something I did not really go into 100%. Especially when I was writing, I was like, damn, I don't want to do this. But if you do enough research and you write in a mode where you have to gain and present knowledge that you may not necessarily readily have, and you make a strong attempt at it, it's highly rewarding, because it did allow me to research stuff with math that I did not even care before. Like, what are the top 10 problems that haven't been solved? In my story, I use the Riemann hypothesis, or the Riemann hypothesis. So I didn't give a definitive proof, but I made an understanding of what the problem is, and I presented an educated guess, which is, it's that style of math is so far beyond my understanding that to the person who reads it and understands math on those intimate terms is going to laugh. But at the same time, it introduces people to math that are not necessarily fans of English, or fans of creative writing, So people who do math or are stronger in the sciences aren't necessarily huge fans of English. They're just not. They're okay technically writing, but they are not happy about doing it. So if you present a story that has elements that they can understand, or that they are that they would recognize as an effort to bridge the gap between, a logic-based person and a creative mind, which we do have in several cases. There are mathematicians out there, Lewis Carroll, who have written fiction, and it's fantastic. You do have people that are really logic-based, and they write fantastic fiction because they do establish the mechanisms to write in great detail. They do have the ability to present complex problems in a very understanding way. And if you understand math on that level, you really do bring in the finer points of storytelling in the way you convey information, because that's otherwise people will just be lost all the time. So there is a gap that I did try to bridge. Moving forward, another thing that you can try as a creative writer is to, not just have a different genre you write, not just a different mode of writing, but, even a different, occupation in writing. So if you're into creative writing and that's all you do is creative writing, try your hand at non-fictional pieces or academic essays. And the reason academic essays are so fun in a lot of different cases, or even not even so much academic essays, but essays in general, where you philosophize about different things that are going on in society. Or if you do journalism, or try your hand at journalism, that is also very fun and engaging, because it allows you to do real research. Like, it's like your own mystery that you're trying to solve, and it's fantastic because people don't normally get into that frame of mind unless they've been wronged because of their ignorance or because of their lack of knowledge in something, that they go back and be like, no, I knew something was wrong, and when I researched it, I was 100% right. Or, damn, I really didn't know, so I'm never going to be taken advantage of that way again. And that comes with understanding journalism. You investigate. You don't just search online and think you know everything. No, you beat feet and you ask questions, and that's journalism. When you're beating feet, or you're on the phone with people you never thought in a million years you'd speak with, but you're asking them questions to really understand, that adds to your credibility as a journalist. That adds to your credibility as a writer. And especially if you do a mixture of both. If you're a content writer for a website and you write something that's bullshit, you can get fired. Not only can you get fired, but your credibility as a content writer will go down. So if you're a content writer for a website and you don't do your research and you don't present things in a certain way, then you could lose the job, or you can lose your credibility as a writer, and that is hard to recover from. Because let's say you worked a long time with this company, you were kicking ass, you're doing good, and then you start falling off in your ability, or you try it for the first time and you really suck at it, and you're like, man, I'm not good at this content stuff. Well, at least but if you are good at it and you are exceptional at it, people will pay you pretty decent for it. Sometimes it gives you a chance to go on Fiverr and add that to your list of freelance skills that you have. People that are really good at academic writing write essays for people, they ghostwrite for people, they contribute to research while they're publishing their own stuff. I mean, writing is a necessary tool for even the strongest or the weakest of academics, so it's something that's the baseline for what you do. If you're a scientist and you're even not the best at writing, you're decent at technical writing and academic writing, because you've been beaten over the brow enough to know that you have to convey a certain message a certain way to an audience of academics. So, once you've been browbeaten enough by academics to articulate yourself well, that doesn't make you an English major, but that does make you somebody who is adept at writing. And the vice versa. If you're someone who is adept at writing, but you have not taken the time to do adequate enough research and develop an understanding of the sciences, if you try and write science fiction, it will come out. It will be very glaringly obvious for somebody who's very adept at science, but also reads fiction. So we do have that particular brand of genre because you have a good mixture of both. Another thing that you can try your hand at is photography and videography. If you do get an opportunity to do something else that is creative, but it's not necessarily in the same vein as writing, or you can do it and write screen treatments, or you can write scripts, or you can perform something. That is another area of writing that you can dabble in. So I've given you different modes. I've given you different occupations. Content writing for websites, which is pretty translatable and uses both academic and storytelling prowess. And then you have straight journalism, which is very factual, very research based, because you need to maintain yourself as a credible orator for the information. So Walter Cronkite, list the facts, get the fuck out of the opinion area. Academic writing, again, it can be rewarding, it can be challenging, and then helps foster creativity when you know more or when you research more. And then swapping genres, definitely something that you may want to do. Swap genres, swap modes of writing, like poetry. Change your outlook on writing scripts. Try your hand at it. Understand that there's more to screenwriting than you ever thought. Like, damn, I gotta download a different software. Maybe I've got to really storyboard and outline how things are gonna go and how they're presented on screen. It just fosters creativity. So when you're someone who is a creative writer, you have to operate in the mode of, I can't just stay in one mode all the time. I have to be able to research, understand, and get out there on the street sometimes and ask questions, or even within the writing community, ask those questions to your fellow writers. Like, man, how do you do that? How did you present that in such a way? What did you do? And that helps your creativity when you are gaining information from, people that you look up to in the writing community. So keep the beat on, keep moving forward, and dabble in something differently. It is okay. It is okay when you hit that wall to do something different. And it may not necessarily be wholly different than what you are currently doing with your time, because if your time as a full-time professional author, or even part-time professional author, is going to be dedicated to writing of some kind, dabble in something different, or do something that removes you entirely from the screen, or removes you entirely from writing for a period of time, and then come back with that renewed vigor. And sometimes it's days, weeks, months before you come back and really crunch the keyboard the way you were doing it. Now, it's not a whole life-changing process, and it very well could be. But it does allow you to mature as a writer. It does allow you to mature as a human being, because sometimes we like to get stuck in that mode where we write something. I remember my undergrad where I already thought I was the bee's knees. I was writing a lot, wrote several plays, a lot of poetry, a lot of fiction, and I was like, I'm on top of the world. And then I was allowed to mature in my academic writing. Then I went back in grad school for my MFA program that I'm in, and look back on my writing and be like, what was I thinking? Or, my storytelling is vastly different. I have, over time, discovered a voice of writing that I'm very comfortable with. So it took a while to get to that point where I even knew what voice I liked, or how I wanted to present information, or even the genre that I really wanted to focus in, which isn't necessarily what I am focusing in now, So at the time I had it figured, like, man, I'm gonna be a historical fiction writer because that's what I read predominantly. No, that's not at all what I have been focusing on with the novel that I'm working on. Has elements of historical fiction, but isn't exactly historical fiction. And I love it. So if you're tuning into Creatacast, again, this topic, especially when it comes to being creative, hitting that creative wall, change it up. Add a little bit of diversity to your writing. Sometimes removing yourself from the writing entirely is okay to do for a period of time, and then come back when you've really hit that story that you want to convey. And if you're a habitual writer like I am, where you write all the time, or you save notes because you came up with a great idea based on something that you overheard on the radio or watched on television or heard someone say, then you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna gravitate towards that later. And that's okay. Gather your book of stories and then story ideas, and then put them to the test. And sometimes they work better as a short story. Sometimes they work better as a longer fiction piece. And sometimes you're like, man, there's so much content here. I think this would make a great novel. Or there's such a good story here. I think I can turn this into a novel or a series. Or, man, this would be such a great graphic novel. I just need to find the right artist. And sometimes that happens. Finding the right artist and having a good duo team up and saying, hey, this is what I want to give a go at. And, I'm going to hire this artist or I'm going to team up with them and we're going to make this happen. Then that is something that you needed to do all along. You needed that change. And be okay with being uncomfortable as a writer, because you only grow from the uncomfortable position. You only grow from being uncomfortable as a writer. All right, folks, I've beat a dead horse here. Please subscribe if you like my content. Please leave me a comment below in the video if you're watching this on YouTube. If you are listening to this on Spreaker Studio or iTunes or whatever have you for the podcast, please contact me if you like what I'm doing. Share this with your friends. And again, thank you for tuning into Creatacast with your host, David Welch. And have a wonderful day. Look forward to seeing all the comments and hearing from you about writing.